Light of this truth, which the Apostle Paul instructs the Corinthian congregation about, I want to submit to you that there are a few questions that I want to impose upon this text this morning, so as to clearly understand what the Lord has required from us as His people within this community. I will use the text to understand what does God want us to do, what does God need us to do in this community. All right. So for the next few moments, what I want to do is consider some questions and identify the answers that will direct us in our representing the Lord throughout the rest of our lives. Now, as I stated earlier, that the book of Corinthians was written to encourage a congregation in the work of the Lord. And encouragement, if you think about it, is something that is needed for us today. All right. We need some encouragement in the midst of all of this economic mess and this confusion that's going on all around us. We need some encouragement in the midst of the political upheaval that is happening in our state and every other state around us, and even in Washington. Tell your neighbor, we need some encouragement. We need some encouragement or some understanding in this age of unprecedented access to what this Word of God to this church, what is its relevancy for us today? So allow me to pose a couple of questions. Number one, simply asking, how does giving charitably enlarge the territory of the believer? How does giving charitably enlarge the territory of the believer? How does giving what is rightfully mine to help someone else return back to me? It's mine. How does my giving that return back to me? How does giving voluntarily of my resources, my time, my talents, my money, how does giving all these things, how does it come back to me? Somebody shout charitable giving. Charitable giving. Charitable giving in and of itself is an expression that is full of love and goodwill towards another. It's an action liberal in benefaction to the needy or donation or gifts to the needy. Notice that this expression of love and goodwill gives way to an experience that has often been sought after, but it has not easily been attained, because the reality is that growth does not come without some expense. Right. You cannot expect to get to where you think you need to be without willing to pay some price. That's what the man in Africa discovered after praying for God to send some rich person to help him or to help donate some money for medicine for the cure of children in his village who were all going blind and needed some medicine that could easily cure their sickness. This man in Africa had a family of about some 6 children, and they lived on $10 a month. And he believed that his minimum income was insufficient to pay for the needed medicine for the children in his village. But as he was praying, he noticed that God spoke to him to give the money for the medicine. He thought within himself, Carol, how can I do this with only a monthly salary of $10? But after much prayer, he and his family decided that every month that they would sacrifice and that they would systematically set aside money to buy the medicine for one of the children in their village. 7 years later, they have saved some 84 children from going blind. But during that time of sacrifice, God provided for his family, this man testifies, in amazing ways. He discovered that when he sought to help others, God in turn sought to help him. He discovered that God helped him in an amazing way. Notice that this man's growth came at the expense of personal sacrifice. What of sacrificing what was his to promote an agenda that would reveal the love of God. So catch this thought, that giving charitably, somebody shout, giving charitably. It enlarges our territory, number one, because it reminds us of God's blessings. Somebody shout, reminds. It reminds us of God's blessings. Look at verse 1 when it says, there is no need for me to write to you about this service to the saints. Paul writes that the Corinthians did not need to have, catch this word, a recap. They didn't need a recap of what their responsibilities were. They didn't need someone to come back to them and remind them of what they were supposed to do. They didn't need someone to tell them again about the bounty of blessings bestowed upon them by their Father in heaven. They didn't need a recap. They didn't need someone to come back and to remind them again about the ways in which God had blessed them. So he says, in essence, to them that their charitable giving was a physical reminder. It is a physical reminder. Catch that word. It is a physical reminder that they would reach beyond the local community of believers and that they would promote the kingdom agenda. So he writes to state a fact which placed before them a reminder of the bounty of blessing that had been given to them by God. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 2, it suggests that what we really need to do, Mount Haven, is count our blessings. Tell your neighbor, count your blessings. Count your blessings. Just count your blessings each week and then give to the Lord based on what He has provided for you. I think that somebody needs to be reminded that God is the source of all their blessings. Somebody needs to target with their memory that life has not been completely robbed, or that it has not completely robbed you of all of your blessings. Think for one moment about the possibilities of what could have happened. Just think about what could have gone wrong. What possibilities existed. What trouble, what catastrophe, what error, what problem could have happened. That will be enough to help you understand that God has been real good to you. You really don't deserve all this blessing. He's been good. Somebody has gotten more than a paycheck over the past month. God provided access into relationships that actually increase your understanding. God provided benefits through cost savings that you had not seen before. God provided discounts that permitted you to purchase what you would have not normally been able to get on your own. Somebody here can give testimony to the fact that over this month, God has done miraculous things, and He has helped you to live beyond what you get from your 9 to 5. Charitable giving. Catch that thought, y'all. Charitable giving enlarges our territory because it allows us to reach beyond the community, but it also reveals, somebody shout reveals, it reveals our zeal over God's blessing. It reveals our zeal over God's blessing. Look at verse 2. Verse 2, when he writes, for I know your what?
Eagerness.
I know your what?
Eagerness.
I know your what? Eagerness to help. And I have been boasting about it to the Macedonians, telling them that since last year you in Achaia were ready to give, and your enthusiasm, your enthusiasm, your what? Enthusiasm has stirred most of them to giving charitably. Catch this thought, y'all. It discloses. It discloses the true thought of an individual. A young man, while working for a Christian radio station, receiving a modest salary and a company car, was attempting to sell his personal car, but nobody was interested in buying his car. And then he started praying for God to help him to sell his car. And as he was praying through his prayers, he began to sense God asking him well, what are you going to do with the money? And the first thing he thought dreaming was, I think I'll spend the money. But in his mind, he saw that God wanted him to do something more with the money. He saw in his mind a vivid image of a co-worker's family who were having a tough time financially. So the young man prayed and he said, God, if you sell the car, I'll give a sizable portion of the proceeds to this family. With a number in his mind far more than anything he had ever given before, noticed that soon he sold the car. And after cashing the check, he put a wad of money in an envelope, and that night he put the envelope in the mailbox of his co-worker, and the next day at work, the co-worker came, and a large group of people gathered around him, and as he was crying, he held up the envelope and said to the young man, look at this! Look at what God gave me! It's a miracle! The young man then said to himself, Brother Howard, yes, God gave him that money. And he got to be a part of God's miracle. Somebody is reaping the benefits of God's blessing. And your eagerness or your zeal is enabling you to give beyond what society says you will be able to. Society looks at us and they wonder, how can you go to church and know you ain't got no job? Society looks at us and wonders, how can you give your time and you just got barely a little amount to live on? Society looks at us and wonders, how can you trust this God that you've never seen? How can you give of what you have? And you never see this God. They don't know that we're not living from paycheck to paycheck. They don't understand that it is the Lord's blessings that we are living on day by day. Somebody shout, giving charitably. It divulges what has been conceived in the heart. It divulges, what's on the inside of us. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 8, Paul suggests that it puts on display the sincerity of love, and it permits it to be compared against the earnestness of others. When we give charitably, it in essence says to other folks, this is what is right, this is where we're supposed to be going. It in essence says, it calls substance out. According to 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 10, it shows the desire and the excitement to share in what blesses the Lord. It in essence says that I'm doing this because this is the thing that blesses the Lord. This is the thing that makes God happy. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 19, it says, it honors the Lord, and it shows our eagerness to help. But then in 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 7, it tells us that our giving becomes a model, catch this, for other believers.
All right.
That kind of messes with some of y'all who don't want to do things and folk don't want other folks to see it. Some of your kids may do better if they saw you do some good stuff. The story told of 3 little boys. They were taught in Sunday school the 3 primary purposes for money. One was to give, to save, and to live. To give, save, and to live. Let's say it again, because some of y'all need this. To give, to save, and to live. They were taught this lesson with 3 jars. 3 jars. They were taught that the first jar was for giving to God. Then the second jar was for savings. And the third jar was for spending or living. Well, after putting labels on each of the jars with a specific designation, the boys were told that whatever they got in the money, that they should divide it between these 3 jars, but always remembering to put God's money in his jar first. A few months passed by, and one of the boys gave his pastors 2 $1 bills. And as he was going on a mission trip, the pastor looked at the young boy and said, well, what is this for? And the young boy responded to the pastor and said, teacher, don't you remember those 3 jars? I went home and I did what you said. He said, these $2 are from God's jar. And you're going to India to do some missionary work, and so I want to help said, not only that, teacher, but I heard that there is a missionary in Africa, and I want to help that missionary in Africa, so I'm going home to put some more money in God's jar. Tell your neighbor, giving, it divulges what's in the heart. But so many people just don't understand. They don't understand that the purpose of money, hey y'all, though you think it is to spend, it is really to give to God's word. He blesses us so we can be a blessing. Giving charitably. Somebody shout, giving charitably. It makes public, catch that thought. It makes public that which has been held privately in the mind for a long time. It publicly declares that what's in my heart, I want everybody to know that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and all they that dwell therein. Anybody sleep? Tell them you better wake up. We got something for you.